Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about why every single dungeon master in the world owes Scott Garibay honor and deference. All right, let's get into it. All right, so why would you owe me honor and deference? Well, because I'm an IRL hero. Yes, that's correct. And IRL heroes are owed honor and deference. So, wait a second, Scott, can you prove that? Sure, I could, in my humble opinion. All right, so I'll present some evidence that that's correct. Well, we saw it in the Great Pandy. All right, what happened in the Great Pandy? Well, in the Great Pandy, we all said, hey, you know who are IRL heroes? Nurses. Right? And we had never done this before. We had always talked about police officers and firemen, or police officers and fire people, like firemen and firewomen, right? They were our heroes, right? Well, times have definitely changed. And I think police officers are very much off that list today, which I think is very sad. That's not a great change. And actually, I think people just kind of forgot about firemen and firewomen, right? But at this point, legit, right? Nurses were held up as heroes and the reason why is in the middle of the Great Bandy, we realized these people were on the front lines and they were doing the work that our nation needed, right? Okay, Scott, so how are you an IRL hero? Because I'm doing the work that the nation needs. What is that work? Going to the movies. Okay, so basically I am a member of the Silver Remnant. The Silver Remnant? What are you talking about? Well, let's talk about the Silver Remnant. So right now, the biggest heroes in the nation are the Silver Remnant. What are the Silver Remnant? Well, the Silver Remnant are the extremely few people who are going to the movies twice a month or more. Now, my actual rate is I go to the movies at least 3 times a month. That would be like in November, like when the worst movies possible are out, or maybe like January, right? Right now, in the middle of summer, I'm going to the movies 5 to 6 times a month, right? It's astonishing, right? Because it's heavy movie season, all the great stuff is out. I'm seeing movies. I saw Dune 5 times, right? In Dune 2, I saw it 5 times in the theaters. Incredible film. All right, now why is the Silver Remnant important, right? Well, it comes from the Fury of Garfield event. So the Fury of Garfield event happened on Memorial Day weekend, late May 2024, and it's when the Garfield movie, was $1 million away, was actually $2 million away from defeating Furiosa. So in the box office race for opening weekend, Garfield and Furiosa opened on the same weekend. And people thought that Furiosa would make $100 million. A lot of people, right? It totally made logical sense, right? It was the return of a well-beloved, decades-old, recognizable intellectual property. It had one of the biggest stars in the world, Chris Hemsworth. That guy gets double digits for films now, right? And it had Anna Taylor-Joy, who is a major on the rise ingenue, right? It had everything possible to succeed, right? It made $25 million domestic on a budget of $160 million. The Garfield movie made $24 million on a budget of 60, right? This is and the Memorial Day weekend box office was the worst in 30 years, right? This situation, the Fury of Garfield event, which I just described, was so bad that Dan Morell was like, 7 reasons movies are dying and what we can do about it. Dan Morell, that was Dan Morell. And there were no less than 100 major channels saying movies are dying. Now, people saying movies are dying has been said for a very, very long time. It's been said for 20 years, right? People ignored it. Well, it's time to stop ignoring it. It is for realsies. Hollywood is genuinely The industry itself is in the middle of a heart attack. It's on the floor and it's seizing, right? And it's time for defibrillation. It is really bad. Like, Hollywood is on the ground, limbs flopping. It's bad. Like, it's not over. The heart attack is literally in progress, right? When you have the worst Memorial Day box office in 30 years, and in addition to that, you have Garfield, right? A movie about a cat that was in the newspapers, who no kid legitimately would even know today, is a hair's breadth away from defeating a $160 million massive blockbuster formula. Hollywood is cooked. It is done, right? Actually, can't say it's done yet. It is in the middle of its heart attack, right? Very, very bad, right? Now, why is it important? Why would a person like myself be a hero to a dungeon master? Well, here's why, okay? So, first of all, this is our American export, right? So, in the early 1900s, we exported American steel. We exported literally tons of it. In America, we were using it to build skyscrapers and railroads. We were literally building the future, right? And then we were sending it by the tons to smaller, less ambitious countries, going like, you guys can copy us a little. We still do the same thing today, but we do it with culture. We're like, hey, the way you live, why don't you change that to the way Americans live? And we do it with our movies. We are the coolest nation in the world. And we define culture for every single country in the world. And there is no limit to what every other country will do to copy us. We are the cool kid on the block. And we very much control culture all over the world with our films, right? Now, that's why regular Muggle people should consider me a hero. But why should a dungeon master consider me a hero? Well, the biggest thing that Hollywood is doing right now is serving as a Muggle bridge for Dungeons & Dragons. So Dungeons & Dragons just increased its length to 1,152 pages to read, because the 2024 core rulebooks are all 384 pages long. That means the opening ante to play Dungeons & Dragons is 1,152 pages, right? Ain't no Muggle in the world going to do that, right? The only people playing Dungeons & Dragons from the draw of Dungeons & Dragons itself are hyper literate, hyper intelligent, hyper dedicated wonks. That's it, right? But there are people coming in from Stranger Things, from video game tie-ins, from novel tie-ins, from Lego, right? And by far the biggest thing we can do to actually get people who are not connected to the tabletop role-playing game world to play Dungeons & Dragons is Hollywood, right? And Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves brought in probably low millions of new people to Dungeons & Dragons, at least hundreds and hundreds of thousands in my opinion, right? And so the reality is Dungeons & Dragons desperately needs Hollywood. And the reason why is what Dungeons & Dragons is accomplishing in Hollywood has just begun, right? We want to have a trilogy, our first trilogy. Then we want to have a sequel trilogy. Then we want to have a sequel trilogy after that, right? We have 9 movies to create, right? And so we can't see Hollywood die. We need to have it defibrillated, and then we need to put a new heart in it, right? And so what keeps it alive? Me. I go 5 times a month, right? I'm keeping Hollywood alive, right? I'm there, right? And I'm not kidding. You have no idea how bad it is. I go on the actual opening night, which is Thursdays. Okay, I have a Regal pass and I go on Thursdays, right? And frequently, and I see movies often in regular theaters and on IMAX, right? Now, when I go at IMAX, the place is packed, right? But there aren't that many IMAX theaters, not even in large cities. They're very limited, right? But when I go to a regular theater, often I am literally the only person in the theater. It is not uncommon at all. And if I'm not the only person, there's maybe 5 people in these films, right? And so the reality is Hollywood needs to live because it is the most powerful thing America creates. And the other thing is, I'm not this the stakes on this are not low, right? Like how by changing the culture of the world, we literally hold off, we push off wars, right? Because the rest of the world is you're not going to go to war with a country you copy, right? And I'm not wrong here. No country in the world has ever gone to war. No country in the world would even whisper that they would go to war with America, except Putin, and except during a Democrat. That did just get broken. To your point, yeah, okay, I got you, right? But generally, we really Hollywood pushes off wars. Like there are lives at stake here, right? And so, but the biggest, most important thing by far is that Hollywood is going to provide the D&D Muggle Bridge and allow us to bring in people who are not connected to tabletop role-playing games, who don't even know what TTRPG stands for, right? And Hollywood is the only one that can do it. It's really important at the level that it can do, right? And so it's really important. So you are a regular dungeon master and you have not been going to the movies. I am a dungeon master I am an American citizen who has been going to movies. I am part of the Silver Remnant. And you, as a dungeon master, because the Muggle Bridge is so desperately needed, owe me honor and deference. You can start in the comments below by thanking me and expressing any sentiments of honor and deference that you have. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing and have a fetch millennium.